Welcome to the Bladtcast. This is a long time coming. Here, of course, in the bunker where I belong. I think then when things go back to normal, if things go back to normal, I might just keep doing the Bladtcast from down here. I love being here, isolated, surrounded by all my stuff. Maybe I'll show some of it to our special guest. Who is our special guest? The one, the only, Mr. Flobo Boyce.
How's it going? So glad to be part of the Bladtcast finally. Episode 4070.
This is episode 368. And after a few years of hearing me promote it, I realized we reached the end of the two shows that we were doing together, Curb Your Enthusiasm and Star Trek Picard, in the same week. And I was like, man, I am definitely going to go through Flobo withdrawal. And there's one thing that Bladtcast Nation needs to know about Flobo Boyce. And that's the simple fact that he generates new content every week.
That's true. Flobito.com, new content every week.
Flobito.com.
Flobito.com.
Now, a big part of the Flobito empire is that you're a DJ, like weddings and special events. I'm going to assume that that work maybe has dried up for a little while.
Oh, yeah. That's a very good question because it's we're still in that realm of, hey, look, maybe we can salvage the year. And so a lot of my couples have thankfully decided to try to postpone or find a free week and towards the end of the year, which is okay because that means you're still generating that revenue. You're not working as much now, but you're going to work that money later. If this becomes a more of an extended shutdown, then yeah, it's going to look like pretty much leads are going to dry up and there'll be cancellations, and that's not fun.
And you're actually one of the only people I know that has flown within the last couple of weeks, right? Was it 2 weeks ago? I forget exactly when it was. You flew to Florida, right?
Yeah, it was that week. I was in Florida when sports shut down. So my show was March 12th, the Thursday. So I flew in the Wednesday. I said, it's kind of serious or whatnot. And then I heard other territories were considering killing the bar scene. But I was in a tourist town, which is even more dangerous. So I flew back that Sunday, and I went immediately into self-quarantine because I was like, well, I didn't know my exposure rate at all that weekend, but I'm not showing any symptoms or whatever. So.
Yeah, because it's been 2 weeks. Yeah, and I had I've talked about this on the last couple of Bladtcasts. At the beginning of March, so let's see, it was March 3rd. I was actually at an event at Staples Center. I went to a Kiss concert because I like to rock and roll all night and party every day. That's right. And there's like 20,000 people. So for those couple weeks afterwards, I started to think, hey, that's a lot of people. And then when you hear about some of the infections in the NBA, there were a lot of them that had the common thread of, well, they all went to Staples Center. And I was like, uh-oh. But as of, knock on all the wood around. So, I mean, that one in particular, that's now almost 4 weeks ago. So,
sure.
But, it's like you start thinking about things that are a little nerve wracking. And I went to a much smaller concert on March 11th, and it's so crazy to think about the stuff we were doing pre-Friday the 13th. And eerily, Friday the 13th is sort of this kind of line of demarcation for a lot of activities and, the warnings and everything. So
they canceled the XFL. That's when they decided the XFL season was over.
And you were all in this season on the XFL, weren't you? You were so excited.
It was. You know what? I played football for a grand total of 3 weeks in high school.
Yeah.
I was a nose guard. I was 5'8", 275 at the time. And I was a fan of football, but to me, NFL got so kind of slow and whatever. When the XFL came, it was like, wow, fast paced and goofy team names and like awesome jerseys, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
What is our hometown team? Is it the New York Dragons?
New York Guardians, the Seattle Dragons on the west side.
I always remember that. I know it's the same thing, and I wasn't even doing it to make the same joke. I'm like, no, I think it's the Dragons. I know that
Arena Football had a team called the Long Island Dragons. I think.
Oh, okay, yeah. And the Red Bulls, that's soccer. So yeah, all right.
They have two teams. There's Red Bull, and then there's New York City Football Club.
Oh yeah. So all right. So that's a little bit of the common ground there. I know you were very in on this season of the XFL, And one of the areas of expertise that Flobo Boyce has over at AfterBuzz TV is wrestling. So I mean that's an extension because that's Vince McMahon's essentially. That's his, trying it again after I guess they had 2 seasons like in the early 2000s, right?
The first one was only 1 season.
Oh,
And that's
only
really
one
what
season.
that's what got me into it. It was the
Yeah.
fact this guy had this idea that failed spectacularly to the point where it became a punchline for 20 years.
Sure.
And this guy decided to do it again with the same name. Like I was like, dude, I got to see what this is about. But the football is actually good. So
I mean, I'd heard that from other people. I'd heard, people had been going to the games and stuff, and they shut it down, and they're like, yeah, we'll be back next year. So I know people who like wrestling. It's when I was a kid, my brother liked it more than I did, but we're talking like the heyday of like Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper, that crowd. And so it's like that's the extent of like the guys that I know. But so have you watched wrestling your whole life? Did you get back into it more recently, or is it just all the way through for you?
I'm one of the few that actually watched it my entire life, but I didn't have cable. So even though I watched it consistently, there are some gaps in there, which is like the new generation era, which is like considered 94 through 96. I kind of like watch results. I had kids tape the shows for me, but I was a lifelong fan. It was from my dad. My dad, he came to this country in the 70s. New York City, but he felt like the most American. Like he was a part of the culture going to wrestling matches because everyone went to Madison Square Garden, regardless of size, color, or creed. Sure. They all cheered and booed the same person. He was a Chief J Strongbow guy. So hearing these stories, growing up, there was a similar wrestler in Tatanka. They're both Native American characters. I was instantly enamored in that. So I feel like everything I've learned in life, I've learned through wrestling. How to deal with people, to expect swerves and heel turns and changes, wearing costumes, looking your best. All that thing came from wrestling. The comedy, I got through wrestling as well. So
right, yeah, and yeah, I mean, I think that all of us as humans are capable of that heel turn at the drop of a hat, and so then here's the tenuous connection that I have to wrestling now, is that I hear a lot of clips from wrestling pre-shows because I enjoy listening to Jim Norton has a radio show with Sam Roberts, and I guess people hate him.
Yes,
wrestling fans like in particular because it's always, and like he seems to enjoy it. They just boo him every time he opens his mouth. Now, as somebody's actual fan of wrestling, is that because he doesn't belong there, or is it because he's too vocal with his opinions, or what is that?
It looks like Sam Roberts is a fantastic guy or whatever, but in the wrestling space, what he does is he has these opinions that are controversial, but fails to back them up. So one of the biggest moments that people have like a hard, like I'm out with Sam Roberts was there was a wrestler by the name of Bianca Belair who was going to have a women's title match on a pay-per-view, and she is like a pure athlete, one of the strongest, like physically pound for pound female competitors, and she was number 1 contender. And Sam Roberts gets on his pregame show and goes, yeah, I don't really see her. She's not really that good. And you're just like, first of all, she's number 1 contender. By definition, she should be good. And second of all, where do you get off? You and your perm. Yeah. So a lot of fans kind of jumped off the boat with Sam Roberts. But he's a friend of Afterbuzz, so I can't.
No, he's a friend of Afterbuzz. Let's be honest. I mean, I listened to the radio show that he's a bit of a dick, actually, but it's very entertaining. It's sort of in the right way. It's a way that works for the radio, but I think when you start translating it out to other things, maybe not. I've met him a few times. He's always very nice. Mostly nice to me. So, but anyway, I was just curious, and I know. So you do a few wrestling shows on Afterbuzz, right? More. Do you do Raw and
Raw and NXT, and then I contributed on the pay-per-view, which is the monthly things on Sundays.
Right. Yeah. And so that the reason I'm bringing up wrestling because I know that it's one of your interests, but also I find it interesting that they're still going to go through with WrestleMania, right? But they're obviously, instead of having it in a 70,000 seat arena in Tampa, they have this performance center or something. So it's just going to be no crowd. And they've been doing shows with no crowds for a while, right?
Yeah, this is entering week 3 of the performance center, which is like,
there was like a hot second where we were told that the NBA was going to play with no crowds. The NCAA was going to do March Madness, which, I don't even know if we can use the term March Madness anymore, because what March is going to be more insane than this one that we've had? But, all these things were going to happen with no crowds, and then that ended up not coming to pass. But WWE has been doing that, right?
Correct. They have been having their shows with minimal staff on camera work and stuff, and with no crowd, and it is kind of an odd thing to experience as a fan, and as someone has to like write these shows now based on how the whole structure of the wrestling shows have changed. Because I have to say, when I'm at parties and I want to be all like, snooty, I'll say, hey, look, professional wrestling is theater in the round. It's Shakespeare for a modern era. So the unwashed matches and the washed matches as well. But it has to need some kind of response. So you have these guys doing the same promos saying, I'm going to kick your ass tonight, talking to nobody. And it's so bizarre. But credit to them for actually at least getting a show moving to WrestleMania. It's their biggest event of the year. People always say you should have postponed it, you should have stopped it. They don't have the luxuries of like ancillary forms of income that other sports have. Their main core product is a live event business. I'm hoping to take a break after the biggest show of the year. But yeah, as it is right now, it's all going to be taped, pre-taped with no.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, I think it makes sense. And look, this is a time for, actually putting product out there. So if they're able to do it in a way, I guess the actual wrestlers can't possibly social distance from one another. Although I guess that would be funny if you did one match that way where they don't actually come into any contact.
Right.
But yeah, and I don't know. I mean, the interesting thing too is that, ESPN has had nothing to put on. So I understand that they're actually airing old WrestleManias every week or something. So
yeah, tonight, the night we're recording this episode, I think WrestleMania 32 was the one they showed.
Yeah, so it's I don't know, it makes sense that it's probably fairly accessible for most people, and as I established, you're in the content business. You understand the importance of new content, and I mean, I'm doing new content every day right now. Recording Bladtcast, saving them for another day. I think you even watched my little opening, my unbagging video that I did. Yeah. I know. I'm just, I don't know. There's something comforting about being back here, and it's so easy using Zoom. It's like, man, if I mean, I know that anybody who had money to put money in any kind of stocks, it's all gone. But I think if we could have bought stock in Zoom, I'd never heard of Zoom 3 weeks ago, and now I use the word Zoom multiple times in a day, and not in the way that Rex and Effect use it. I don't want to boom boom and a zoom. It's actual, like, I even told my wife, like, I gotta go Zoom with one of the guys that I know from Afterbuzz. It's a verb now. It's what we do.
Absolutely.
It's the activity we do. We Zoom. So sort of building on that idea of the wrestling is happening. The baseball season, it's not going to be soon. I feel like we'll get a full half season where there was supposed to be the All-Star break. I don't know. Do they have the All-Star game and start the season that way as kind of like a showcase? And do they just stick with the second half of the schedule? Because then you get like weird matchups and stuff like that. I don't know. But I bring it up to ask you because much like myself, you have the misfortune of being a Mets fan. So
someone has to be a fan of the Mets, right?
I know. I mean, come on. It's like in middle school, it was like, well, no. In middle school, there were a lot of Mets fans because when I was 10, they won the World Series. So all of a sudden, everybody was a Mets fan. And then, like by the time I graduated high school, they weren't anymore. And the Yankees actually weren't that good, but everybody went back to being a Yankees fan in the 90s.
Nobody remembers how bad they were until like 95.
Yeah, I know. I would always ask people, it's like, so, it was like in college and even after that, I was like, so how many games did you go to between, I don't know, 1985 and 1995? Like, before they started winning, So, but did you grow up in Queens? Did you just live there a little later in life? How did you end up a Mets fan?
I'm actually born and raised in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
But I live.
I don't know how I got that. I thought you lived in Queens at some point, but
I mean, Queens is cool. I don't hate Queens.
I mean, come on, you got to go out to City Field,
I do because I live on the southeastern coast, so like by Flobito Field and then Kings Plaza, the Bell Parkway. Sure. So growing up, we got both, UPN or not, what was UPN back then? WWOR and
Yeah.
WPIX, played both games. And for a while, when I was a kid, it was just baseball in general. Like I didn't really notice
Yeah.
anything. Fun fact: I was actually 1 year old when the Mets won the World Series, right?
Look at
And
you.
actually, yeah, get this. I recorded over Game 6 of my dad's VHS with wrestling. That's the way it comes back full circle. He was so mad. No, but I got into the Mets. Like I think I don't know, 5 or 6. I think Tim McCarver's smooth voice lulled me to sleep, and I was a fan ever since. And I chose once, and I didn't choose again. And my dad actually followed me after the playoffs, where Roger Clemens threw the spin of the bat at Mike Piazza. That
Oh,
he
sure.
was done with the Yankees. So like I was the one
Yeah.
in my family to pick
Yeah,
the team.
it's a little harder to remember now, I think, but there was a point where in general people kind of liked both,
Yeah.
and I always feel like a lot of Jets fans don't hate the Giants just because they're like, oh, I mean, it's hard enough. And when you have people with the double whammy of Mets and Jets, that's pretty rough.
Yeah.
It's like when somebody sprinkles in, either the Giants or the Yankees, they're like, at least they get something,
Right. Right. I actually quit
But
that team.
the
That's how
the
bad.
worst is probably, let's see, Mets, Jets, like Islanders, probably. I mean, because like,
Knicks.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
I'm
So.
an Islanders fan, so I get that too. But
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like, and again, that's the Rangers Stanley Cup was my senior year of high school, so they had that, and then like there was a minute where the Devils were really good for a while there, and I always lived on the border of New Jersey, so you'd always get these like, I don't know, there were some interesting loyalties, but the reason I bring up baseball, it's not happening,
right.
and I mean, hopefully eventually. And we had I play fantasy baseball, and we had online drafts scheduled, and the one league they were like, yeah, it'd be stupid to do it. The other league, everybody still wanted to do it, and not everybody, but a few people did it, and we were like, it's really not going to happen for a while. And then everybody got talked out of it, and then we didn't do it. And then we heard that Noah Syndergaard was going to get like Tommy John surgery. So then there was nobody who was being like, "Oh, we should have done it,"
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. Hard squad to Noah, man. I mean, he threw
Yeah,
hard his entire career,
I
and
know.
glad it happened in an off season. But it wouldn't have been the off season that had to be had a normal schedule or
Yeah, I
whatever.
mean, that was the thing I was thinking is like, even somehow the Mets can have a player when they're not playing, the sport is shut down, and he hurts himself. They could
That's
always find a way to get on the disabled list.
That's pyramids. But I am concerned about if baseball comes back this season because I'm thinking the last time there was an extended layoff, like a player strike or something, right? There was at least a home run race to get people back into the sport. I always wonder how much market share baseball is
Yeah.
losing to football and other
Well,
sports.
I would say
How,
the difference there was, it came back in '95 in a shorter season,
yeah,
and the players went on strike because they wanted more money, all that. So people had a bad feeling about the sport at that point. And I think the home run chase wasn't until '98, maybe
yeah,
'99. So there took a few years. This is a little different. I feel like if it comes back in the middle of this season or it comes back next year, I think people will welcome it because they'll be so glad. I feel like, when we're at a point when we can go and see live sports, we can go to concerts and things. Everybody's going to go to everything.
hopefully.
It's just like the thing that I mean, you're going to, but there's totally going to be people that are like, I don't want to go around and be around of anybody, and the longer this goes on, the more people I think that are going to just kind of become like shut-ins to some extent. I was joking on my day job with Dennis Miller. I was just joking. It's like, no, they'll have to actually be a government mandate to make me go out of the house when we're supposed to. This is too comfortable,
I'm made
Um,
for it.
yeah. So, and there's two ways to look at this. So I look at this, the quarantine here from the bunker. I love my family. My kids are adorable, but I'm with them. I'm with them all the time. And so I look at Flobo Boyce, and you live by yourself,
Yep.
and I'm like, oh my God, that's what I want. But tell me, is the grass greener, or is it how is it basically being by yourself pretty much all day?
Yeah, there is a bit of give and take there, because I know when my girlfriend and I used to live together up until like very recently, the days when we were both in the house together and I had nowhere to go, it was like torturous. I always felt like I needed space to create
Sure.
and stuff like that. And so being
Well,
myself,
somebody's got to generate that new content.
yes, exactly. And the new content wasn't happening every week at that time. It was hard. But now it's so great to look in my living room and have like my content calendar for the month. I actually did it now, and go into my bedroom here and record. And I say, oh, I can get set up. I love that space. But there are moments in time in the mornings when you're like, oh, I'm by myself, or late at night, or you hear like people having fun 2 doors down, or there's like an argument happening. You're just like, what about me? I want someone to argue with. But it's very fleeting, you know. It kind of is a kind of grass and screen.
I could see that though. Like you hear an argument through the wall, and you like make yourself some microwave popcorn, and you sit next to the wall, and you're just like,
yeah, this is content.
Oh no, he didn't. What did he do next?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But so when you go out, and look, we're able to still go out and buy groceries and that sort of thing. Do you find that you're extra chatty when you're socially distancing because there's not people to talk, or is doing stuff like this, being able to Zoom or talk, it's like when you get the movies about, when people aren't supposed to go out of their house, technology never works. But right. we can talk to anyone except we're not supposed to see them in person. So is the in-person isolation, do you feel that, or is it like, I can still talk to people, so it's okay?
It's hard because it does feel like a weird movie. You go to the store, or I like to jog. So I jog every third day. I used to jog every day before the quarantine, but I was like, well, why limit myself? You'll see people with the head down. They try to walk diagonal to social distance.
Yeah, the way that we always walked as New Yorkers, our
right.
Down, see somebody coming, you go across the street. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing that this morning. Sorry to interrupt, but I was just thinking that I'm like, oh, this is the way I used to walk around Manhattan, like after midnight.
Yeah, there's no time to say that.
If I'm walking to like Port Authority or something, it was always like, there's a person on the street.
Just last night, I think my apartment complex finally broke, and some people came out and they socially distanced and played some music and danced just to break the monotony, which is pretty awesome. But I had no part of it. I was like, you know what? Whatever. But the other side of that,
you open your window, and be like, get off my lawn.
Yeah, exactly. I know that noise. I'm by myself making content. But the flip side of that is that when you see someone, you feel like you're in a movie. You're just like, stay safe. Be well. It's just that those kind of things you never said to strangers before, and that's the thing that I'm getting really weird about,
Yeah, it's always this like earnest sort of, not greeting, but sort of like a farewell from the people who work at like the supermarket. They're always telling you to take care of yourself and all that. And I mean, who would have imagined that, like, how important / terrible those jobs are, the amount of contact that they come into now. And then also just like, look, nobody's happy. I don't know when the last time was you went to the supermarket. I went today, and there were a few packages of toilet paper because they limit it to one per person. So I hadn't seen that in a little while. They were still out of sanitizer and wipes, which that's the stuff that I keep looking for, trying to get some more of. But like a week ago, nobody had like bread, and now there's like bread and there's milk. Eggs are a little harder to come by, but they still have. So you're starting to see it normalize a little bit. What are you seeing down in your neck of the woods?
So it's a little difficult for me because I live on a very high traffic corner on Venice and Overland. And so that grocery store had the line for the longest time. And sure. I'm not a germaphobe in that way, but the line outside to me is dangerous, is it not, if we have to be social distancing? So I would try to supplement around. I would go to like the Rite Aid for medicine. I'll go to the local like ethnic stores for like my rice and stuff like that. This weekend, I went to like the bulk store, Smart and Final, to get some like my giant bag of trail mix and stuff like that. Some things are coming back, that like to your point. But the thing is, I think the scary part about it is like we just now have this gross sense of like what's okay. If I grab fresh fruit, has this been touched? How long can it survive on fruit? Things I never thought about before. But there's a lot more things on the shelves, which I think is a sign in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that at a certain point, people can't afford to hoard anymore. You're
True.
just like, I'm going to buy all the Cheerios, but then it's like, wait, I already have like 20 boxes of Cheerios. I can't buy another 20 and that sort of a thing. I posted on Facebook sort of a joke thing about, the real hardship my kids are going to have lived through during this. And it was a photo of store brand Cheerios that I had to buy because the real Cheerios were gone.
You
But
savage.
no, I know. Yeah, it got some good feedback. So yeah, and I guess the thing that you start to realize too is like a lot of times, like, your CVS or Rite Aid, a lot of times they have milk or eggs. There are places that isn't necessarily where you're looking. And yeah, like the smaller ethnic grocery stores or sometimes even restaurants and things that they can have like an attached like grocery area, so you definitely get to be a little bit more industrious. So is there one thing that you wish you had stocked up on that you're just like, oh man, I can't find it anywhere? Because for me, it's the wipes. We have sanitizer and we have we've had some wipes, but they're not going to last probably more than like another week.
It doesn't exist anymore. But my last day job, I sold hand sanitizer for a living.
Right.
So we had a whole stock of hand. This is the sweet spot after Ebola and before this, when nobody cared.
Right. Yeah.
So we had stockpiles, and I used to go door to door, saying, "Hey, look, this is hand sanitizer. The money you buy this goes back to Nigeria to help those kids," and no one wanted it. On my way out, they asked me if I wanted any stock, and I was like, "I'll take a little bottle. I'm fine, but it doesn't expire." You know what I mean? Like I wish had I thought about it, I would have had like 2 40-ounce jugs ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It's and it's, I don't know. Look, it's not like we can't get food. And I think there definitely was this little panic. I talked a little bit about this on a past episode. There was, it was 2 Thursdays ago, because as you remember, one of the shows that we do is Star Trek Picard. I was like, yeah, we got to do it at 10 o'clock. I can't do it at 9 because I had to go to the supermarket.
I totally get that, by the way. You're like, hey, man, there's an announcement. Let's do it an hour later. And I was like,
well, it was just, it was like, I'm like, I don't quite know what it means. And I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, no, I have to, I actually wasn't going to go to the supermarket for probably another week. And I spent $376 at Bonds. And I remember it because that's like $250 more than I think I'd ever spent in a single grocery store trip. And I'm still like, almost horrified. I'm like, what did I buy? I mean, I can see it everywhere. The fridge is stuffed. We got stuff in the freezer. We got stuff in the cabinet. But it's, there are these moments where you start to you don't even panic because you're going to run out of food. But it's just, you start to think. And like, even today, when I saw that there was toilet paper, I'm like, oh my God, they have toilet paper. I'm like, wait, you really don't need it. You have plenty.
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be like food in the house, at least for me, but going out there, because like, for example, let's say I go out for a run, right? I try to limit my exposure outside, but then you're like, well, I'm outside. Should I grab something on the way in? What do I want to get on the way in today? So I'm always, there's like a weird pack rat kind of thing that's happening. And forget sales. I used to go like price shopping and go from one source to the other. Now you're like, whatever it is, I'll take it. Let me get out of here.
No, the last time that I was at the supermarket and they did have eggs, I bought the organic eggs, which were like $2 more a dozen, but they also were going to, the expiration date was like further into April. And I'm like, I might never see an egg again. So where are the chickens? What happened?
Right. So, USA.
Yeah. But then as it turns out, like our local farmers market has been open and they have eggs. So I'm actually going to be fine when it comes to eggs, as long as I go at 9:30 in the morning on a Sunday, because I'll tell you the one thing that quarantine hasn't changed about people. Nobody's getting up early on Sunday. So at least we have that. So what sort of things have you been doing to pass the time? I like to think I have all these books that I want to read. There's all these shows that I'm like, oh my God, I'd like to binge this or that. What have you been doing to pass the time?
It's funny you say that, because there's so many things I've learned about myself that I'm able to do at the time. And there's some things I'll still procrastinate on. I have no time to read this book and I'm sitting here doing absolutely nothing. Yeah.
You're sitting here doing the Bladtcast instead of
way better idea. You know what? The sad part is that my natural wake up time is like now slipping towards like 9:30 or 10. So I still set an alarm up. So I set an alarm at like 7 or 8 anyway.
Yeah.
And I'll get up.
If I could sleep till 9 o'clock once It would be great, you know. But
Well, yeah, no one puts a foot in your face, right? Like, I'm
yeah,
hungry, Dad.
yeah, exactly. Like both of my kids were up at 5 this morning. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Don't you understand? We're not doing anything today.
They're going to be the future athletes. They're going to play for the Mets.
I guess so.
So I make sure to get my social media out the way for first couple
Yeah.
hours, and then it really is content creation, writing articles, and then trying to look for like this is supplemental income, day jobs. Also, take an hour a day doing that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how long this is going to be. And then it is a bit of a catch up. There is I play some video games. I Twitch. I stream video game playing sometimes as well. And then if it's an Afterbuzz Day show, then I'll watch the show. And if it's not, then I'll try to write some jokes.
And where do people find you on Twitch? Are you Flobito?
No, I'm Flobo Boyce on Twitch.
Oh,
my
no
gamer name.
Flobito. Okay.
I'm sorry to disappoint you all. My branding's all over the place.
Everybody's falling in love with the name Flobito.
Yeah.
So yeah, you referenced it a couple of times. So you write jokes. Now, are these jokes for Twitter, or are they jokes to one day try and your act when the world is ready for stand-ups to be on a stage and giving them jokes?
Yeah, it's definitely for the stand-up. The Twitter jokes to me are kind of like the fleeting stuff, like the one-liners or what have you.
Yeah, and it's also stuff that's sort of like super topical. Like you're not going to do like a 4-minute chunk in your act about Tiger King, because by the time you get on stage, nobody's going to care anymore.
No one's going to care. And that's sidebar, Flobo fact. That's what retired Weird Al. It was so much he didn't want to do it. It was like the time an album comes out, the cycle is already like, oh, okay, whatever.
What, Weird Al? Yeah, that's the interesting thing too, is because like I had never seen Weird Al, and I saw him, I don't know, somewhere in the last like 10 years, because I just always wanted to go. And it's like, you know, he has original songs, and there were a couple of song parodies that I had never heard because I don't keep up with the albums. But then it's like he's doing parodies to like a Madonna song from 1985, and you're like, well, the song's not funny anymore because you heard it all that time ago. And it's like, is the song really like good if it's not making you laugh? It's such a weird thing. But then the guy, I don't know, the guy doesn't play stadiums, but he plays amphitheaters. You know, he's not playing, you know, small venues. So
I saw him in August at the Greek, the Hollywood Bowl. He did the Hollywood Bowl last August for his mandatory fun tour. It was amazing. He had the Philharmonic going at the same time.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, so that's the point. Yeah, and I mean the sort of humor that I deal in, you know, working with Dennis Miller, I do write some stuff for him, but it's usually current. So so for me, a lot of times, like when I come up with things, I'm like, this isn't right for him, but I'm like, well, what am I going to do with it? All I can do is put it out on Twitter. You know, I can save it. I can try to say it myself on his show, or save it for one of these shows, or the Trump Report, currently Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific on Afterbuzz TV. Thank you.
You're going to have a big show this week. Woo!
I mean, it's sort of always a big show, though. That's the crazy thing. It's like, you know, there's never been the week in the 3.5 years that we've done it where I'm like, I don't know what we're going to talk about this week. But yeah, exactly. So, so when did you start doing stand-up, though? Did you do it when you still lived in New York?
No, stand-up was always a thing I wanted to do one of these days. You know, I grew up with The Tonight Show, and I thought that was pretty cool that comedy was
the Jay Leno Tonight Show.
Yeah. To me, The Tonight Show will always be with Jay Leno. I remember when Carson was a host, but I was very, very young. So like Jay Leno was like my inspiration, because every night you got new material every night. And it was
new content every night.
New content every night. And it put the entire world news scope in your brain. And I always wanted to do it, but I was like, one of these days. And I'm not sure how much time we have or how much to go into it. But long story short, at 28 years old, I had a near-death experience. I thought I was going to die. And in that moment, before I thought I was going to pass away, I had two big regrets. I was like, you know what? You never rode a motorcycle. You never tried comedy. And so when I survived, I was like, you know what? That's a mission. I'm going to go to a comedy class. I'm going to take motorcycle lessons. And on August 10th, 2014, I debuted at the Comedy Store here in Los Angeles on a 3-minute set. I think it's available on YouTube. It was terrible, but I loved it. And I've been doing it ever since.
Did you ride a motorcycle to the gig?
No. I wish I could.
Because then
2 years later.
You just would have been like, no, I gotta do them both tonight because I gotta make sure. So Was it an open mic or and you just?
I took a comedy class, Adam Barnhart's Clown House. He actually has a school down in now it's gentrifying down in downtown Los Angeles, and he has a show every week at the Belly Room. The Belly Room is where they do roast battle. So he took a 6-week class, taught you how to write a joke, teaches you how to clear and to be in character, and your graduation was 3 minutes at the hallowed ground of comedy.
Right. I've known people that have done that sort of thing at like Flappers here in Burbank. You know, it's a little smaller scale. I think being able to do 3 minutes at the Comedy Store would probably be pretty cool. I did stand up a little bit when I lived in New York. This is going back like 20 years. And I liked the few minutes I was on stage, but I hated everything else to do with it. I hated waiting. And I hated you're supposed to go out in Times Square and try and get people to come to the club. And I'm like, I don't like people enough. I'm not getting paid for this. So why do I care if they come, you know? And then it's just like, I think I was better suited to be a writer. And there have been times I've thought about it. And then I'm just like, nobody is clamoring for me to get back up on that stage, you know? But,
who knows, man? Maybe the writers of Conan have a touring show.
Yeah, well, that's true. And, you know, now it's one of those things of like, oh, well, you know, I haven't done it in so long. Maybe it would be fun. And it probably wouldn't be. But, you know, so how much, so that was 2014. How comfortable are you talking about your near-death experience?
So like I mentioned way just like a couple minutes ago, I used to be very, very heavy. I was at my heaviest 375 pounds when I was in college. So that's like a 6 extra large shirt and a size 56 waist pants. I went out and I started losing the weight, lost a bunch of weight, lost about 150 at the time of surgery, and I had to get my skin removed in my abdomen because there's no elasticity in my skin. I've been pregnant for 16 years. And doing so, there's a suture line that runs from my chest to my pelvic bone or to my junk and both sides of my wrist, my waist. So it's like an upside down T, you know? And 3 days after that surgery, 4-inch seam of my suture line had reopened. So I was bleeding out on my couch. Right here in Culver City. And my mom was a nurse. She retired. She was a nurse. She went out to get gauze just for unrelated reasons. Comes home, she sees me like bleeding. And doctors and nurses have a certain tone of voice where they know you're like gone, you know? I was like, Mom, what happened? She's like, it opened up. Just let you know it opened up. I'm like, oh no. So we kind of rushed to put a compress on this 4-inch long gash. And so I just had ab surgery, so I can't rest on my stomach, and I can't rest on my back because my side is open. We called the doctor frantically. He goes, sorry, cannot help you because since the suture line was sterile, he can't like resuture it. If anything, you have to like stop the bleeding and go to the emergency room. And my mom didn't want to move me because it was so large. Sure. So I basically was on my left butt cheek holding my right side. I remember SNL's playing in the background, and you have like small regrets. Like, oh man, I wish I made more money. Or I wish I kissed more girls. But the two biggest regrets I had for some reason, because I was okay with passing now, was you never rode a motorcycle. You never tried comedy, bro. And I said, hey, if I survive tonight, I'm going to do it. And like Ian Fleming says, you know, you only live twice, once when you're born and once when you stare death in the face. And
and James Bond also says no time to die eventually in November. So it comes soon. So I mean, I understand. I would assume your mom was there because you were having the surgery, but it's imagine if she wasn't there, you know? So
right. The panic alone would have been the deal breaker.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you'll post like an old Facebook picture, and it reminds because I've known you a couple of years. I forget that you were very heavy at one point because you have probably pictures that aren't from your heaviest, but every once in a while you'll see it and be like, oh right, that was Flobo.
With an afro.
Yeah, but now it's all clean up here, Flobo.
Right.
For those watching on YouTube, you can see that. But you know what? There'll be a picture for the thumbnail for people listening to the audio version. So let's talk about when your life really changed forever. When you first met me, when you started doing AfterBuzz TV, did you start doing wrestling, or were you doing other stuff there?
Wrestling was always like the goal and the dream, I guess, because the thing is about the wrestling network, because AfterBuzz has like verticals. There's like reality, there's
Yeah.
comedy, there's all that stuff. The wrestling group at that time was very, very insular. Like it was a club. There was like people who did the job every week. It was a franchise show. Kevin Maria's relationship with WWE. You can't get in because you're too new.
Yeah.
I got into AfterBuzz because I just wanted to do more things with comedy and with hosting. I just wanted to be able to project and be a good interviewer, because my dream in life is to have my own variety show like The Tonight Show. So I figured, hey, learn how to interview people on AfterBuzz. That's how you do it. So I graduated, did all like the things. Kelly Boyd got me in, wrote my recommendation, and then I couldn't get on the show to save my life. Couldn't get on the show to save my life because I was just too new. And I treated it AfterBuzz like Home Depot. I just hung out in the lobby and I was like, "Hi, how's it going? You guys need a show? You need a host? You need a host?" And I filled in for Zach Silverman a couple times on The Flash and Arrow, and then I got a couple shows in there. And it was only I think that when we worked together on Star Trek. Was that the first time we worked together?
Yeah, and you came on
Discovery?
to Discovery. It had to be season 2 because
Yeah.
I remember the panel for season 1, and then you came in on season 2, and so you hadn't done a lot of shows regularly at that point.
No, I graduated host school in November of 2018.
Right. So it's not, so it's not even
Yeah.
even 2 years. So
Yeah, not into
and that brings us around to Star Trek, and I think you have one of the most unusual paths to Star Trek of anybody that I know. And I thought it was great to have you on Discovery, the Star Trek Discovery after show, being new to Star Trek just entirely. So explain for not everybody who watches / listens to the Bladtcast checks out all my after shows, and shame on you for not. There are a few who do. Our pal Mark Hunt, he's a big Bladtcast guy, but he also loves Star Trek, so he always checks that out. Like if he finds out that I filled in for on Doctor Who for 1 week, he'll watch that one. So I always appreciate that. Awesome. Yeah, but talk about how it was that you found Discovery, how you discovered Discovery.
I love it. It's fun, you see. As a grown up, I kind of avoided Star Trek. It was a different time. One, there weren't very many blurs out there. Like Star Trek was like the epitome of nerddom. I was a person of color in Brooklyn in the 90s. Thought it wasn't for me. I tried dabbling, watching it or seeing it while I was scrolling. By the time Deep Space Nine came out, it didn't really interest me at all. But which
is interesting because that's the show with the Black Captain.
Yes, yes, yeah. Cisco, right?
So yes, and and Avery Brooks is great, by the way.
Hawk.
Yeah, and Next Generation, it had LeVar Burton. So they're not the original series, but the later series all made sure they all had very well. I guess Next Generation had a fairly diverse cast, but then
I think so.
Voyager and which is as people who watch those shows know is certainly not my favorite. They did a pretty good job doing it, but it just whatever it was, it still just didn't speak to you, right?
Yeah, it didn't speak to me, and it wasn't like. Again, I'm a guy that read Archie comics in private. I didn't want to get like beat up or made fun of, So I kind of
even by the way, even nerds would have beaten you up for that.
I know. Let's get them.
You weren't reading, like X-Men or Justice League, or you were reading Archie. Like, what are you doing?
Hey man, he has two loves, Betty or Veronica. So flash forward to November of 17 of 18. Do you remember? 18. Yeah. And I got a DJ gig in Italy, if you could imagine that. So it was my first distance destination wedding. It was out there in Fiore on the Amalfi Coast, and I had no money. I went there on a shoestring budget, actually lost money on that wedding to make more money on the back end. So there was one day I had a free day in Italy, but I had nowhere to go because I had no cash. I had enough cash to get me back on the bus home. Right. So I fired up Netflix, and Discovery airs on Netflix internationally. It doesn't air, it airs on CBS here, it airs internationally. And I binged like 6 episodes. And I said, oh my gosh, there's like spaceships and naval calling and like dogfights and stars, and I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, and it will never be a Green Lantern show the way I want it, even though there's one in development now, but I thought right now that's the closest thing to it, and it was like politics, but it was like fighting and casual. It was everything I wanted in the show, and I was all about it. So when they had the AfterBuzz, hey, we're looking for a host for Discovery, I was like, I'm shooting my shot.
Yeah.
Send.
No, and it was great, and it was just like, and the first time you told me that, I'm like, oh, that's actually really cool. That's how you found it, because everybody watching, listening, your Netflix login works wherever you are. Well, most places in the world. There probably are places it doesn't work, but and it's going to be that region's Netflix. So you get a show like Discovery, and in at least in the UK, Star Trek Picard is on Amazon Prime. So it's
Okay.
like there's no CBS All Access in those places, but they make so much money off of those licensing deals that the budgets, are so high. Especially, that was the thing that impressed me about Discovery, was just how much money they spent on it, and the effects and everything. And I don't know, I really liked the show, and I think that it was flawed in some ways, but I don't know. I find that to be one of my favorite shows of the last few years, is probably Star Trek Discovery, and it brought Flobo into my life, and then I think so we've done that, and then Picard sort of as an extension of that, which we'll talk about in a minute, and
Sure.
of course Curb Your Enthusiasm, and then there was this weird moment in time where we did something called Chambers.
Yes.
Which I still don't know how I ended up on that show.
It's a weird story. There's some gaps in this, but I'm gonna try as hard as I can. So there was this push at AfterBuzz to get more bingeable shows under their umbrella, because Netflix will release a show and it will pop and everyone will talk about it, like Tiger King is now, or Love Is Blind was before it. And they had this thing for Chambers, and there was an intern there. Her name was Haley. That for the life of her, she asked me what my name was one time and she forgot it, but she was too embarrassed to ask again. And so she thought I was Christian Blatt. And so she signed me up because she thought it'd be cool to sign me up, Christian Blatt, to be on it. So when we actually grab you and go, hey, Haley, that's actually Christian. She goes, oh, okay, but you are Christian. Don't worry about it. So we both got on this show about this person that got a heart transplant from someone who was possessed. I don't know what that was.
I don't know exactly what it was, but it was all right. And we had that guy in who played Big Frank, like her uncle, on the show. That guy was great. I follow him on Instagram. He seems like a great guy, and it was that was a fun interview. So I don't regret it, but it was such a weird thing to end up on a show like that. There's a couple of shows that I did like that. There was like this show where Sean Penn was an astronaut going to Mars or something. I don't even remember what it's called now, but I was just like, sure, I'll do that. What were you going to say?
No, I was looking at it as, look, I've been in AfterBuzz for a couple months, and they assigned me to moderate you. And like you and Carrie Lane are like my teachers at AfterBuzz. I'm like, why me? Christian Blatt's in the building.
And that's the funny thing too, is that Carrie Lane used to do the Star Trek Discovery after show, but you guys were never on at the same time.
No, we weren't. It was American Gods that was on our show at the same time. Yeah. But I was
Carrie. Like her schedule, she just mostly started doing stuff in like Santa Barbara. But what I noticed from her Twitter is that now that everything's on Zoom, she was doing like 4 shows tonight.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh yeah.
That's too much content every week. I can't.
Look, you got to spread your content out throughout the week. Don't do it all on the same day, So yeah, and I don't know. And so I found it to be an interesting sort of thing that, you come at Star Trek from that point of view. And then this Picard show comes, which in all honesty, it's trying to appeal to people who are diehard Star Trek fans. Discovery was definitely trying to get everybody.
At first,
yeah. They were definitely trying to just, they wanted to get all the nerds, but here's the thing: they knew they were going to get them anyway for Discovery, so it was a little bit more accessible. And you, in the interim, you had watched some Next Generation, but finding this Star Trek Picard show, I wondered, and it's over now. We finished it, and we don't really have to talk about spoiler heavy stuff, but we might give away a thing or two. What did you think of that show, not being completely new to Star Trek, but it hasn't really been part of your life for more than the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's a weird mix, and I don't want to pull this film student card, but if it was for new fans, there was a lot of things that were left out or not like discovered or described. Like for me, when people say Hugh, I think Hugh Kluber, the medical examiner from Discovery. So it takes me a minute to go, oh wait, that guy is also Hugh from the other show. But at the same time, if it's for hardcore Trek fans, there's some things that are over-explained. I feel like it's kind of pandering to them because there's some scenes that reference shows that I saw. And I was like, oh, I get this episode. Why they're repeating this beat? So it was kind of a weird mishmash. And I know we get a lot of bad comments from people saying we are too negative on the show. I think ultimately it was good, but I felt like I watched it and I finished it. I was not any desire to go back, or I don't feel the wonder or the excitement or like my eyes opening up like how Discovery was.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that I don't know that I would, if I had the time, that I would watch all of Discovery again, but there are episodes that I think were great that I could see myself being inclined to watch. But Picard was like, I feel like it was good. It just wasn't great. Seeing him again was great because I love him. But like the story that they decided to tell and the way they told it was, mostly unremarkable. And I don't know, I think it's true. I do wish on the panel we had somebody that was sort of the no, I love everything. And when we would have Rachel Goodman on, she seemed to be the most positive of us. Right. But I always think it's good if you're doing one of these shows where you talk about an actual show for like 45 minutes. It's great when you have somebody that really doesn't like it.
Oh yeah,
they're talking objectively about what it is they don't like, not just like, yeah, it sucked. That's why I like Frank Moran, one of our panelists on the show. I don't know if he likes anything.
He's so funny, man.
He watches Riverdale. I don't know how he does that.
I could not do that. I'm an Archie fan.
You just said you're an Archie fan. Yeah. But by the way, I meant to ask you during this. I mean, it's got to be Veronica, right?
If me or if Archie?
No, you. Yeah.
As I gotten older, I've appreciated Veronica a lot more. I was a kid, I was a Betty guy because she made
all
cookies.
Betty all the time, but yeah,
she made cookies. But yeah, we get your Veronica. Get you a Veronica.
Right, exactly. Man. And really, it's a line that Jason Lee had in Mallrats. But like Archie was just always trying to figure out how to get them both. That's really what it came down to, So,
yeah, metaphor for life.
But I don't know. So it's interesting that we. There's so many platforms for watching all this stuff. So we have a show like Star Trek Picard on CBS All Access, and you're able to get all of this stuff. But sometimes you wonder, like, oh, did we really need that? If it was the old days and you would have had to sell it to a network and a broadcast or cable, maybe you wouldn't actually have gotten to make that show. And I don't know. I was glad to see it, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe the second season will be amazing. If we ever put TV back into production, but so
it just told to me it should have been a miniseries. If it was 4 episodes or a 3-hour movie, perfect.
Yeah, the pacing was really bad. We talked about that on the after show. It was like the first 4 episodes, you were like, that should have been told in 2 hours.
Right.
So I don't know, but I do love Sir Patrick Stewart, and seeing him play old Charles Xavier in Logan, and then just a couple years later getting to see him play old Jean-Luc Picard, also known as JL.
Team Raffi, woo!
Yeah. So if you don't watch Star Trek Picard, there were some new characters, and
which you loved.
Flobo liked. No, yeah, I go back and forth, like, because I didn't like Raffi, and I really didn't like Dr. Agnes Girardi, who has a questionable act that she doesn't really get punished for, So
I never saw the point of Elnor, but he was there. That's cool.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great point. So I don't know, but what stuff do you watch for fun that you're because like for me, in all honesty, like the last few weeks, the only shows that I've watched have been Star Trek Picard and Curb Your Enthusiasm, because I do after shows for them.
I can't lie to you, man. It's the same thing with the wrestling things. A lot of things that you talked about being on the Picard show, we do. We have like, people who are objectively negative and things like that. So it's WrestleMania season. So currently now with quarantine, I'm going back and watching old matches and old storytelling waste. Because the thing is with wrestling, there are story advancements, but you ultimately are talking about an action. How was that game last night? So you got to come up with different ways and new ways to say the same stories a lot of times. Yeah. So a lot of time I try to do that research, watch my own footage, see how a host I'm becoming and how can I improve. I watched your shows to take your ideas to be a better guy, a better host, a better moderator. A lot of YouTube clips to get myself some bite-sized intelligence. But I don't have a hard show. I don't have like a hard list of shows.
Well, and that horrifies me, the idea that you go back and watch hosting that I did, because I can't even think about any of the stuff that I've done, and I don't know what you could possibly gain from it, but I always appreciate when you say nice things like that.
Well, let me just blow some more smoke, man, because
please do.
The biggest thing I learned about Christian, I learned from Christian Blatt, and I think that you did to me in a good way, is that you are very good at protecting the new. I don't even mean like new to the panel. It could be new to the world. You're like, even if you know, hey, look, this person, don't like set them up to fail. Find a way to get your point across that you're not babying them, but give them a shot to actually have a chance of answering the question. And that's like the biggest thing that Afterbuzz does not teach you. And you did from like week 2 when you're like, so did you know the what's it called? The Klingons actually do have hair? And I'm like, no, I didn't. They didn't have hair in the show.
Not on Discovery, yeah. And when we did Curb Your Enthusiasm, James Maple, great guy, he actually didn't want to do the show, and I talked him into it via email, because and it's so funny too. It's I mean, it's funny to me. He meant to reply all that he wasn't going to do the show, but he only sent it to me. So I wrote to him. I'm like, no, I think you should do it. Don't worry about the fact that you haven't seen it. It's going to be fine. And he did it. And I was so glad that he did, because that was a fun panel to have with you, James, myself, and Rachel Goodman. And obviously, I do love our Star Trek panel with Nikki Bailey, and all of the emotions the emotional roller coaster that she went through on this season.
Can I say that when Nikki was added, no shot at Nikki, because she's amazing, but I was afraid. I was like, okay, if there's 3 Star Trek experts, am I just like the dumb blonde? You know? Like, you guys don't need me then? But no, she's great. The panel's great too.
Well, yeah, and I always try. I always thought it was important to have you, and on Marvel TV Weekly, when we had Amy Cassandra Martinez, who's been on the Bladtcast a few times. She was relatively new to just Marvel in general, and I'm like, no, that's great. I think it's good to have that point of view of like, oh, I don't get this or that, like coming at things as I don't know. I find that interesting. I think if you had a Star Trek panel where all 4 people were new to Star Trek, in fact, I know that that's what people felt about the Doctor Who panel, is that they didn't know the old classic version of the show. Right. And I knew it a little bit. And just the fact that I knew anything, all of a sudden I had all the, I wasn't even a regular on it. And they were like, oh my God, have him on me. And I'm just like, well, but I don't know. I always think that it's like I feel like I can never be quiet too much. And especially like on a show like Trump Report, sometimes I don't talk for like 4 minutes, because it's not even, people aren't even fighting. They actually agree. They're just sort of going back and forth over finer points. And I'm like, what's going to help if I say anything? And I think that a lot of times you feel like you should talk, but sometimes it's like, no, it's just better. And I don't know. I think that's something that I've probably learned just from listening to what I think are good interviews. And we live in an age of the long form interview. And I would say that, Howard Stern probably does it better than a lot of people. He gets to have those 90-minute to 2-hour straight long interviews. And sometimes it's just like, you just let the person talk a little bit longer because he can, and they're going to say something that they probably wouldn't have said somewhere else. Whereas like late night TV interviews, like Tonight Show or whatever, it's not even a knock on the hosts. It's like 6 minutes. You get to have like one story, you plug your thing. And then, if it is Jimmy Fallon, then you got to go like, I don't know, have a staring contest or a pie eating contest or something, So I don't know. I always find like a good interviewer. My boss, Dennis Miller, says this is like, I can talk to anybody. It's like most people, you can figure out what's interesting about them. And I don't know. I always find like the hosts of all the shows that we do are all just as interesting as, they bring their own things to it. And so one of the main reasons why for a while I've been like, oh, I want to have Flobo on the Bladtcast is just because of all the different things you do, because I know the sort of your past that you talked about, how you had been really heavy, and you'd alluded to things like that. And then the fact that you stand up, but also because you generate new content every week.
Yeah, man, I do it, man.
And what is the new content that you generate? Is it just videos? Do you do is it a show on Flobito.com or?
Okay, so I try to do it at the very, very minimum, like a Instagram repost where I have a little mini blog and then like, hey, it's a picture I post on Instagram. That's like
Yeah.
if I can't find anything to talk about. But on the DJ side, I have a playlist called Flobito Radio. I update with like my picks so people can see it. Or I have a YouTube show. It's called What's Up, Flobo? Where I just talk to the camera about things of the day, like my Mets fandom or the wrestling thing or the Afterbuzz thing. I actually started a Patreon last week, so we're trying to figure out what will be premium to that Patreon for paying patrons and what will be free. So like the idea now that I'm single and have the time, is to really push out. You see my face wherever you go, right?
Yeah.
Because it really is about that. And one of the cool things about the lockdown, I guess, is that it is kind of like flatten the curve. It's pretty much putting people on a level playing field. Like I'm in my house. I am doing the same thing Jimmy Fallon is doing. Before I would say I don't have his budget, but now I do. So what's my shot to say to go for it, you know?
Yeah, no, and look, a lot of people are consuming content on like Instagram Live because they all have it and it pops up on their phone like, well, I got the time now. Oh, this is something new. Let me actually see what this is. And yeah, there are so many people that are out there doing all of those things. And I don't know, it is interesting. And like I said, I mean, I've been inclined to do a lot more. I mean, if you look at the Bladtcast YouTube channel, most of it's like, once or twice a year I would put something up, but because these shows that I essentially wanted to have a way to connect for audio, and then Zoom turned out to be the best way. Well, they also record the video. I'm like, well, I don't want it to go to waste. I'm going to use it because why not put that on the YouTube channel? And I do. And I don't know. I mean, it's like people, look, I've got people subscribing. Good for you that you have a Patreon. I think that the way I feel about myself, I think I don't have the self-confidence to do it because I can't handle if I put out a Patreon and I had like one or maybe like,
that's what I have. One.
Like, see, if I had none and I was just like, and I started like hustling and trying to encourage people to do it and I still had none. But it's like there's people I know that they can do it and it can work, past guests on the Bladtcast and somebody who's royalty at Afterbuzz, Roxy Stryer. Yeah, she can get patrons, of course.
Oh, she does live stream on YouTube. She gets banged.
Yeah, she does great. And I'm not that level of a personality. I'm in the back of the garage. If you want to see what's in these boxes, great. But
it's so sketchy. Why would you say
that? The idea that I would ask people for money for it, I'm just like, I can't. But, and I think that's just my own shortcomings.
I agree with you. For a long time, I felt the same way. It's like, look, I'm a chump in my bedroom, or I'm a chump writing these blogs, or whatever. But the thing is about Afterbuzz, whether or not we like to admit it or not, because I don't know if you guys know this, Afterbuzz does not pay us a whole lot. If I could be bold and blunt, is that for some people, that's like, we're like their best friends. We somehow broadcast into their bathrooms or to their bedrooms or whatnot. So if someone has the urge to, there should be a way to do it. I'm not trying to hustle people and say, Patreon or else, sucker. But if someone goes, hey, look, I'll kick you $3 a month or $5 a month to get bonus content, then that's fine. That's why I mitigate in my brain. But I hear you. I'm the same boat. Like I'm never thinking like it's good enough to sell.
No, and that has been the best thing about doing Afterbuzz is getting to know people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, such as yourself. And then, you get some experience that, like, I wasn't good at a teleprompter like at all, and doing well, it's not daily right now because there's no news, but doing a daily Marvel news feature. It really helped me figure out. It's like, well, you don't just look at it and read it. It's not that simple. Unfortunately, I wish. So you get the skills, but the people who like those shows are usually very welcoming and accepting. Except, of course, for on DC Movie News for the aforementioned Roxy Stryer. They write the most terrible things to her in that live chat, and I'm just horrified by it. But she just shrugs it off because she's tougher than I am.
Yeah, she's tougher than I am too.
Yeah, you have these people who like the Afterbuzz shows, and sometimes I'm like, how do they have time to watch all the actual shows and then the Afterbuzz shows? How do they even know who I am that they're taking the time to do it? And and it's like, Who did watch the Chambers after show? I mean, did anyone? I don't even know.
I have no idea. In my experience, it tends to be like people who are super fans, and there's some that just come to the chat. Like on the Run It Raw show, it's just a hangout with the same 30 people every week. It's like, hey, how's it going?
No, Marvel Movie News is like that. It's a lot of the same people week after week. And, look, a lot of them also watch DC Movie News the next day, But it's just like, they are very accepting. There's usually a lot of like, hey, where's this old host? What happened? You deal with that at first. And it's like, oh, I don't know about the new people. And I would always write stuff like, yeah, I don't know about us either.
Right.
We'll all we can do is try our best. We're not going to be the people that you used to see on the show, but we hope you like us.
You are so right. The wrestling shows were basically handed to me in September of last year. The last host, Evan T. Mack, got promoted to WWE. Like, they signed him.
Evan's great. He did Marvel Movie News just once, and it was so much fun to do a show with him.
Oh, he is. I think people don't realize how much of a talent that guy is. I mean, honestly, I met him. Again, back in my desperate to be on any show phase, I signed up to do a Super Bowl watch along, and he was there too. And he knew the sport. He knew to be funny, entertaining. We're friends ever since. But when he got promoted to WWE, they gave me both Raw and NXT. Here's somebody thinking, I'll work 2 years, so maybe we'll give me an episode. Now I'm covering these big franchise shows for the network, and I would say the show is as slick as it always been, but there's some fans in the chat that goes, I miss Evan's personality.
Of course.
Well, I'm not Evan. but it's always going to be a different kind of dynamic. So I totally relate.
No, he was such a big personality, and like it wasn't planned. Just conversationally, all of a sudden we got into, who would be, who'd win in a fight, Batman or Iron Man. Because essentially, because it's just more powerful. Exactly. But they're basically the same guy,
Yeah.
Rich guy with a lot of gadgets. And it was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And we talked about it. We spent a lot of time on it, actually. It was fun. And I was like, oh, that guy's great. And then I was like, oh yeah, you should come back on. And he left and had gone to the WWE. And I'm like, oh, right. So that ship literally sailed, but
quite literally.
Well, Flobo, you're always welcome to come back on the Bladtcast when we have something new the new content. I don't know when we'll be on a show again for Afterbuzz. I would assume Star Trek Discovery Season 3. We don't have a premiere date for that, but that's what seems the most likely.
Right.
But
or Chambers too, if they ever reboot
they
it.
They very specifically didn't pick up another season of Chambers. It said that somewhere.
They saw our after show. They're like, we can't do this anymore.
They were like, no, we don't want to bring them together again. So we mentioned at the top of the show, but where are all the ways that people can find you and keep in touch with you?
Oh, yeah. I am all over the internet. If you follow me on Twitter, at Flobo Boyce, on Instagram, at Flobito. I'm on Twitch, at Twitch TV/Flobo Boyce. My website, of course, is Flobito.com. The Patreon is patreon.com/Flobo Boyce. And you can support me by buying a t-shirt at Flobito.threadless.com. So
what do the t-shirts say? Do they say Flobito or?
There's the shirt design I wear when I do my gigs. It says Flobito Tonight. It has like a little TV, like for the talk show dream of it. There was one when I ran for public office, and I came in the last place called Call Me the Mayor.
as you were talking, I was like, oh yeah, I knew I needed to ask you about one other thing. You ran for public office in Palms, which is that essentially part of Culver City, or?
It is the other side of Venice. Venice cuts through that, but Palms is Los Angeles, so our grid is a little different. We have cheaper utilities, but 90034 is county in the city of Los Angeles.
And so you ran for like city council, or what was it?
So it's neighborhood council, which is even hyper local. I ran as a business representative, which is nonpartisan and not based on anywhere I lived. But because it's through the city of LA, you have to go through the same training as if it's city council, like ethics and money management and like conflict of interest training and all that.
And you had always wanted to, you always had no interest in being a part of politics, and then you did it. And how do you feel about politics now that you ran for office?
There's too much politics in politics, man. Real backstory real quick. Growing up, my dad he's actually a registered Republican, but he hates guns. My mom never registered, but she's a liberal and she lets prayers in schools. So they argue about politics all the time. I always said, nah. But in 2016, when President Trump became president, there was a drive in LA to have more young people to get involved. And I said, anyone can do it. And they're like, well, you have the qualifications. I go, I guess. I looked online, and it was like, do you have a driver's license and a business license in Palms? I do. Okay, now I'm a candidate to run as a business representative. What I learned about politics, though, there are people that do it just to say they did it. There's people that do it to do it the next stone. There's people who make back deals. Vote for me. I bring my pizza shop to vote for you. And you can run as a slate and have 4 people with 4 budgets running against you as a single person. And this is very, very hyper-local. So I came in last place, and I just saw how things could be scaled, right, on a bigger scale. And then I had the nerve of people to ask me on the side, hey, man, you want to be part of a community committee? And it's like, if I didn't make the team, I'm not coming to practice. Like, what is going on? So that was a cool experience. I learned a lot, but that's pretty much done for me.
Yeah. No, exactly. And because that was while we were doing shows together. You were running for office, because I remember you were talking about it a lot. Yeah. And I don't know. That's another thing that I could never imagine doing, running for any kind of office where people had to decide that they liked me enough to check off next to my name.
Hashtag Boyce in the Hood was my slogan.
The fact that I have 81 subscribers on the Bladtcast YouTube channel, I'm like, who? It's the old parody of Jerry Seinfeld. Who are these people? I see that an episode of the Bladtcast. I'm like, wait, 500 people listen this week? Who are these people? Who's checking this out? Like, who wants this? And I mean, I guess, to be honest, I mean, I do have I have a couple of different areas. I can do stuff on Afterbuzz. I am on Dennis Miller's show. He's great to me. I get a lot of time on there to kind of say and do whatever I want. So I don't know. I guess somehow I trick people into thinking I'm interesting or entertaining. And everyone's yeah. That's when you really got tricked. I think I've signed an autograph once, and it was the weirdest thing. I'm like, what? Wow. Because it was an event for Dennis Miller's radio show. So I'm like, all right, well, it's not him signing it, so you can ask me. But still, even that moment, I'm like, well, this is the most worthless piece of paper that's ever existed.
That's terrible.
But. Anyway, Flobo, this is great. It's gave me an excuse to talk to you because, usually we've got to share the time with the other hosts and just sort of a casual conversation. Well, if there is a baseball season, that would be a good time to talk to you, heading into it. We usually do we were supposed to have done, it would have been this week's episode actually of the Bladtcast we were going to do our MLB season preview episode. I was trying to figure out times with the 2 people I usually do it with, and then they rolled up the AstroTurf on the season, and we'll see what happens.
In the meantime, we'll pray for the Afterbuzz Mets revival, right?
Oh my gosh, Mets Rap 360. That was the first show I ever did at Afterbuzz. My first episode, we had Jim Brewer on in studio. So
whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was fun. And by the way, it's out there, people. You want to watch that? You can see it. And he calls me out because at some point in the middle of the interview, I just started sweating profusely. And it was like I had like a knockoff jersey, a throwback jersey from like the 80s, and the thing didn't breathe because it was a cheap knockoff version of it. So I just all of a sudden I was just all it's sort of embarrassing, but it's funny.
Those studios will betray you.
Yeah, right, exactly. Anyway, Flobito.com. That's where you should go and buy a t-shirt, for God's sake. Why not? I don't sell t-shirts because I don't have enough of them to sell. If I did, then I'd be afraid that no one would buy them and I'd be stuck with a t-shirt. So you see, that's me in a nutshell. Flobo, I will certainly have an occasion to talk to you soon, at least on the interwebs. That is all the time with Flobo. That is all the time for this installment of the Bladtcast. But on our next episode 369, we'll be joined by my friend Zia Landerson. Just a little one-on-one. We're going to do another Zoom. We're going to be doing a lot of Zooms. That's our new normal, right, Flobo? This is how we do everything.
Zoom. Yeah, man. Why not? It's the future now.
Did you enjoy my shout out to Rex in Effect a little earlier with a boom boom?
I did that. It was very on brand for you.
Yeah, no, you're very, very on brand. All right. That's all of our time. We will see you all next time on the Bladtcast.